I've been hearing about how Endwalker is the worst Final Fantasy XIV expansion and it's causing players to leave. I heard so many different takes on this issue already, and I have to admit some of these takes sound so biased. I had to share my own opinions on it. It's AvyCat. First of all, let me start by saying this. Endwalker is not my favorite Final Fantasy XIV expansion. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Is it my favorite? Nuh-uh. My favorites are still Shadowbringers and Heavensward, but that's a personal thing. Endwalker's story was really enjoyable for me. It was really good. I really liked the NPCs, the new areas. The content was really good too, but the post-Endwalker content? I find it really silly to blame the players leaving to just Endwalker though. If you think that's the only reason, you're just being goofy. That's not. There are tons of reasons why players are leaving or taking breaks, and sure, the post-Endwalker content is really not helping right now. We'll talk about that. So let's start with post-Endwalker content, since that's what people have been talking about recently. The producers of the game made so many changes to this expansion. They tried so many different things, and not all of these things worked. One of these new types of content was Criterion Dungeons, which we have so many feelings about. The idea is so great on paper, but it turned out to be such a disaster in practice. The development team took a gamble with this and they didn't really think. Like, there was so much potential with these variant dungeons and they squandered it so bad it hurts. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the content was bad, it was good, and that's why it hurts even worse. I actually had a blast playing that content and there is no reason to go back and replay it. It was different, it had beautiful visuals, and I really like how the boss's mechanics changed depending on the little choices you make. The problem is you can get literally everything you want from these dungeons in less than a week, and then you have no reason to go back to it. You can buy the outfits and the pets from this dungeon from the market board. If you don't want the mount, you don't even need to run it. I still can't believe they released a banger content like this and they said, you can run it if you want to. I don't even want to talk about the hard versions of these dungeons. No one runs them. I want to clear it, but there's nothing in the party finder. If you don't have a static party to run it with, good luck. You're not clearing it. They could literally solve this issue with one simple change. Instead of giving us those relic weapons for free, they could let us grind it from the variant dungeons. It will actually give us players a reason to log in and do some actual content, which brings us to the second reason why Endwalker is not great at retaining players. They removed grinding from the relic weapons. It's not the same thing if we just give us things. It doesn't really tickle the worms in our brains the same way. It's not rewarding. Listen, we are MMORPG players. We like to complain. It's in our nature. We say we don't like grinding, but actually we love the pain. You're just too shy to admit that. I don't know whose idea was this or why they made this decision. It just really doesn't adapt. They know how to make good MMORPGs. They should know this is not a good way to keep the players. And I'm saying this with all the love from my heart. I really love this MMORPG and I want it to succeed. Final Fantasy XIV has the strongest community I've ever seen in any MMORPG, and it unfortunately feels like they did everything to isolate the players with this expansion. They've been trying so hard to make solo content a thing in this expansion. I don't know where they got this idea.
What is the balance that you're trying to strike between making the MMO a super ease of access solo player experience versus a more punishing and involved MMO experience that I think people have come to, in a way, expect with MMOs? And I think in a good thing, in a good way, it's been a breath of fresh air. Final Fantasy didn't have many of those things. It's been a breath of fresh air. Final Fantasy didn't have many of those things.
He's been conspiring against us all along. Why does it lie? Why does it lie? You don't believe that? That's bullshit. Such a weasel little liar, dude. You didn't lose all that hair by doing casual content in MMORPGs. You've been grinding that content. Why are you taking it away from us now? Maybe I want to be bold too. Fight me, I'll fight you back. What now? Just because I'm a cat girl, you think I can't pull it off? Okay, I'm calm now. We had Variant Dungeons, Island Sanctuary, expanded duty support. It's almost like they're ready in the game to release it as a single-player game. It's super weird. All these things are great and I enjoyed them, but did they really have to release all these solo content in the single expansion? We didn't get a big group content like Eureka or Bozja this expansion, which is probably the reason why it feels like there's less content even though there isn't. Group content is the backbone of an MMORPG. That's where you meet other people. That's where you group up to do epic stuff together. Without the group content, it will feel like there's less content. In MMORPGs, people are the content in a sense. That's the whole sales pitch. It's multiplayer role-playing games. Even if you're socially awkward like me, playing with other people is what makes an MMORPG fun. It's just not the same when you do it alone. If I wanted to play a solo game, I will go play Baldur's Gate. I really like the idea of Island Sanctuary. I really like farming sims, and I was actually excited to have a whole island for myself. And as a casual player, I did find it enjoyable. It was a pain to grind, which I love. The problem is it was not a substitute for the group content. It was such a lonely and depressing experience, even though I did love every second of it. I can see why some people didn't like it at all. It's not for everyone. I was sitting in my room at 2 a.m. clicking on some vegetables by myself. It was so lonely. The funny thing is that I wasn't even the only one online in my free company. Everyone was doing the same thing but in different instances. We were all tired, sleepless, sitting in a single voice chat in silence. It was like one of those videos, you know, you've probably seen them. 1 hour of silence interrupted by random catgirl noises. Even in Stardew Valley, you can play with other people. In Island Sanctuary, you can't do that. You're stuck in your sad little instance. It further isolates the players instead of bringing them together. We're not socializing with each other unless you force us to do it. We're socially awkward. We are gamers. You have to dangle something in front of our faces to trick us into human interaction. I know it sounds like I'm just here to complain about Endwalker. No, it's not. You're silly if you think that's the only reason players are leaving. There are a bunch of other reasons that are not related to the content itself. When we look back at the time the game got so popular, you'll realize there were several different reasons why it gained so much attraction. The first and the most obvious of them, we were in quarantine. We couldn't go out. We were stuck in our homes. And what do we do when we're stuck at home? We play games and masturbate. Now that we're not living in the doomsday, people actually go out and do other stuff instead of gaming. This affected so many games, and Final Fantasy XIV is not an exception to this. The second reason, Blizzard was putting on a shit show for us. They had a lawsuit about the harassment of women in the workplace. Their solution to make things better was to turn the woman portraits in World of Warcraft into fruit plates. Not good stuff. People didn't like that. As a proud fruit plate myself and a supporter of other fruit plates, I cancelled my World of Warcraft subscription. So did many others. People didn't want to support a company with so many harassment issues, so they moved to Final Fantasy XIV and other MMORPGs. Now that people are talking less and less about it, people are moving back to World of Warcraft, which is naturally affecting the player base of Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV was arguably the most popular MMORPG among these World of Warcraft refugees. But you know what it is like. Most people have one main MMORPG they fall in love with and they just stick with it. I'm one of those people too with Final Fantasy XIV. Even if I take breaks to play other games, I know eventually I'll come back to it. I have a cat girl to feed. I can't leave her unsupervised for too long. It will be too dangerous. Look at those eyes, they're beaming evil. There was also this specific bald guy, Asmongold. If you're reacting to this, hi! Yeah, you were correct. Final Fantasy XIV does turn you into a furry. I should have listened. I think it's too late for me now. There's no going back. When Asmongold started streaming Final Fantasy XIV, it brought a lot of attention to the game. We can probably say he is the reason why Final Fantasy XIV was so popular among World of Warcraft players. I don't think he's playing Final Fantasy XIV anymore or not streaming it as often anymore, and it's less promotion for the game. That year was like a big bang for the game. It was like the universe was plotting to make this game huge. All the producers had to do was to sit in a corner and watch it happen. I don't even think they expected this much growth. It's impossible to expect the game to retain all these players it gained that year. It's also so silly to blame Endwalker for it. Even though I have to admit, the choices they made didn't help retain that player base. I also want to talk about something the most content creators tend to avoid for obvious reasons. It's a bit taboo to even mention it on YouTube, but it got to the point it's impossible to ignore. So let me start by saying this. Third-party programs and modding in Final Fantasy XIV is against terms of service. I don't encourage anyone to use them, or if you're using them, do it on your own risk. That being said, I'm sweating right now. That's such a risky thing to talk about. I'm not here to stir that pot again. I just have to briefly mention it because it's related to the point I'll make. Third-party programs and mods in Final Fantasy XIV are a lot more popular and accessible now. Don't ask me how I know, just don't. It's better for everyone. A majority of the PC players use these mods, and because of that, Final Fantasy XIV attracts a whole different player base now. This new player base is a lot more interested in the social aspect of the game and less of the content itself, which is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. Even though it's not what I enjoy personally, I'm glad people are having fun. That's the point of video games. If you're having fun, you're winning it. And I'm happy for you. It's been very popular, and I feel like Square Enix is even leaning into this idea of a more social player base. My only concern is that I don't know how reliable it is to build a whole community on this. Yeah, people are enjoying it right now, but I feel like these player-run venues and nightclubs have an expiration date on them. I think the developers are a tad bit too comfortable on relying the community to run itself. It doesn't help that this kind of social content heavily relies on third-party programs. I really can't blame the player base for using these programs, even though it is against the terms of service and I do not promote them. We all remember what happened with G-Shade. We all remember how things can implode so quickly. What if something like this happens again? Square Enix has no control over it. If they really want to keep that social player base, I feel like they really need to start making some quality of life changes. For example, I'm not a venue goer, I'm not interested in the nightclub culture myself, but as a traditional role player who loves to join and host campaigns in-game, I would love if they increased the character limit in chat and maybe added more dice options so we can have modifiers. I actually have a bunch of other ideas, maybe I'll make another video about it. I just wanted to share my opinions on this. Let me know in the comment section, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I know it was a longer one and it's not as silly goofy as my other videos. Final Fantasy XIV is my favorite MMORPG ever, so it's all coming from my heart and with love. I really want this game to succeed. And that's the end of my video. If you liked it, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And with a special thanks to the channel members who support my caffeine addiction. I love your guts, and as always, I'll see you in my next video. Stay cozy!